Hey everyone, welcome to another Speed Secrets podcast. Today, I'm really looking forward to this because I'm talking with Loni Unser. Loni, welcome to the podcast. This is going to be a blast.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really, really excited to be here. Like we were saying earlier, I've listened to some of your podcasts now and they've brought a lot of value to me. So just honored to be on
Uh,
this.
well, I'm afraid to even ask this question. Maybe I should have asked you if it was okay for me to ask you this, but your dad and I raced together at Dale Card Racing back in '93.
Oh,
Um,
dang.
you probably weren't even alive then, were you?
Nope. I don't think
So
I was a thought yet, even.
yeah. So this is cool. So, and you know, I suspect that most people know who you are, but you're part of the famous Unser family, and I don't want to get caught up in all of that because bottom line is you're just a race car driver. Sorry, but you're just a race car driver.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh, I gotta wonder though, how does that impact things for you?
You know, I get this question a lot,
Yeah,
and it's kind of like you were saying. I just go to the track and I'm just another driver, I kind of forget about it. But then at the end of the day, sometimes I stop to remember what my family has done. And I'm just amazed and honored to be a part of the family because they have done so many amazing things. And I think ultimately it just motivates me to be better every single day.
well, then I'm going to get the obvious questions out of the way then, and then we'll get into some other fun stuff. But uh, well, actually, before we go there, let me step back. How long have you been racing now?
So I'm going into my fifth year of racing. I've been racing since 2017 when I was 19 years old.
What did you start in?
Spec Miata, which
Ah,
was the best place I could have started
yeah,
other than karting. I mean, it would have been cool to start off karting like most do nowadays, but Spec Miata is just so competitive,
yeah,
which I mean, you're not going to go out and get wins right away, which is great. I want to be in with the best so I can learn the most.
yeah. And then you have been doing quite a bit of the like World Racing League endurance stuff because that's where I've seen you recently. We've actually raced against each other. And how is that endurance racing? I guess. What do you think? Because this year you're going to go and race in the Global MX5 Cup, right?
Yeah, I am.
We got to
Um,
talk about that too. But that's
yeah,
so yeah.
for
Uh,
sure.
but how do you think racing, doing these endurance races, has impacted or is going to impact the the cutthroat sprint racing of MX5 Cup?
Yeah, for me, it's I am so thankful for my year in WRL because it gives you a tremendous amount of track time. So I mean, you go there for a weekend and you get a whole Friday of practice and then 8 hours each day and then split between your team. You get just hours and hours in the car, which is great. And that's what we're all about as drivers, is just seat time is so important. And you know when you're endurance racing, it's a little bit different in the fact that strategy may be different in terms of fuel saving or whatever it may be. So you're not around, it's not like sprint racing in that you're just in a really tight pack. But I do think that I can take what I've learned in WRL and apply it to the Mazda MX-5 Cup. But that being said, Mazda MX-5 Cup, I know, especially at Daytona, is going to be really intense. I mean, I just went to visit Hickson Motorsports a couple weeks ago for their test, and we were seeing that the draft equals around 3 seconds per lap.
Wow.
So it was crazy. So it's all going to be drafting and it's going to be so much thinking, and it's all just going to come down to strategy, I think, at the end of the day. And of course, outright speed, but it's different in that sense.
Do you have a good spotter?
My dad, actually.
Oh,
Which,
okay.
yeah, I'm really excited about it. He has done a little bit of spotting for me in the past, but this is going to be the first really big race that he spots for me. And we've kind of come up with some strategy and whatnot. And I'm really excited to work with him because him and I are just so close that it's going to be cool. And honestly, it's a cool story, the
Yeah.
fact that we're working together in that capacity.
Well, the good news is that, and hopefully Johnny's listening to this, but if the drafting strategy just doesn't quite work out right, you can just blame him. Because come on, spotter, you're supposed to tell me.
Yeah. And it's perfect because my dad and I are really competitive. I mean, we're always on the sim trying to beat each other's lap times. So it works out.
Yeah. Hey, so let me get the obvious question out of the way that I was going to get into. And now I'm going to get into the obvious question, which is, with your family, there's no shortage of great advice, tips, information through the years, maybe just the past 5 years that you've been racing. What's some of the great pieces of advice that your dad or uncles or cousin, the Unser family has given you?
The one thing that I keep taking away is patience.
Ah,
And I think that can be applied to every facet of racing in terms of the business side, in terms of driving through a corner, and then also in terms of race strategy. I've learned through driving Spec Miata, if you try to make a pass or if you try to force a pass, you'll probably end up getting freight trained at the end of the day because
yep.
if the pass doesn't stick, as you know all too well, I'm sure. But that's that's just been the most important thing to me and something I keep repeating to myself over and over because sometimes in racing you want things to happen immediately and it just doesn't work that way all the time.
Well, it's kind of weird, isn't it, that race drivers who are all about let's get things done fast, let's go, 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 go,
Right.
and okay, now be patient. What? It's kind of a weird mix, but for sure the best drivers, and you have a lot of them in your family that have shown how patience and then speed at the right time wins.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you don't want to pass up opportunities in terms of making passes or whatever it is, but recognizing when you should use patience, I think, is really important.
Was there ever a moment where somebody in your family said, "Oh, don't get involved with this crazy sport," or were they always encouraging?
My dad and mom actually, they knew from a young age that I loved this sport and wanted to get into it really badly, but they kind of discouraged it almost. Uh, but when I was a senior in high school, my dad came to me and said, Lonnie, when I was your age, I was able to go to a driving school. It'll make you a better driver on the track. Or not on the track, on the street.
Yeah.
So you should go. And I was, of course, ecstatic. And then that day, the day of the driving school, I was able to find good pace and, beat some of the guys who were there, which was pretty cool. And at the end of the day, I remember sitting at dinner and just looking at my dad and asking if there's any way we could possibly make this happen because I was hooked instantly. And we kind of haven't looked back since. And of course, now my parents are both so supportive. And like I said before, my dad is, my best friend. So it's really cool because I think if I hadn't have gone into racing, I wouldn't have been as close to some of my family members as I am now.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very cool. And you did a lot of downhill skiing, correct?
So I did downhill skiing from the time I was probably 2 years old up until high school. And then in high school, I actually transitioned to Nordic ski racing
Oh,
because I liked more of the physical aspect of it. In terms of like Nordic skiing is like going for a long run or a long bike ride. So whereas downhill skiing is, really quick bursts of energy and you have to have a lot of strength. So, but that being said, it taught downhill skiing and even Nordic skiing taught me a ton. going into racing, because it's all about lines and line finding. So downhill skiing, it's, if you're late in a corner, your whole run is messed up. And it's kind of the same with car racing. Like, you want to be hitting your apexes exactly every single corner.
So is it about, I guess, thinking ahead and kind of planning out the line, the path that you want to go on the skis? And like you said, if you come around a gate and you're late, it's all over, right? And it's the same thing on the track, I guess.
Absolutely. And also looking ahead is really important. So I kind of started to get those things instilled in me from a young age, which is really cool, because now I saw it translate to my driving.
Many, many, many years ago, way before you were born, I had a performance driving school at the racetrack and in Vancouver. And at the time, it was sort of towards the end of this, but the Canadian ski team, there were four of them, Podborski, Ken Reed, Ken Irwin, and Dave Irwin, and I can't remember the other one, but they were known as the Crazy Canucks because they were crazy in the downhill. Like, they were just, they won a lot of races because they were just a little crazier than most. And I had three of them come to my school. Uh-huh. And I guess, even though I expected a lot of them, I was surprised at just how well they picked it up. The ability to, just kind of close your eyes, imagine where the track went, and, they go around the track once and they could just go, okay, I know exactly where, and they get the line perfect right away. And I'm sure it's just the same kind of thing for you. You've got that, I guess, that programming instilled in you.
Yeah, and it's important you brought up the fact that they can just pick up a line really quickly and they visualize it and use that, because we were taught in alpine skiing visualization techniques. And, you hear over and over about how important it is to visualize and start. And so that is another thing I started developing while I was younger, is those visualization techniques, because in alpine racing, you get to slip the course, but you don't get to run it beforehand. So you really have to make sure you know where it goes and visualize what you're going to do in your head, because you don't get that chance. Well, I believe you get that chance in downhill alpine skiing, but not slalom and GS. So you really have to make sure you are using that technique, because then it's like you've already run the course. And so, of course, it's important, as we know in driving, to visualize as much as we can, because, we don't get much time on the track.
So is alpine skiing then a little bit more like rallying, where you kind of do the recce thing where you get the little bit of a slow run through it, and then it's just, okay, now it's time to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is crazy. I mean, those guys send it. So it's a good lesson for us in driving. I mean, it's the same thing. We just kind of have to send it,
Yeah. So have you noticed so far that you are quicker at picking up tracks than some other drivers? Or?
It's still something that I'm working on. I'm always working on that, because I think the best drivers can go to a track and be really fast instantly. I'm getting better and better, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I have an extreme ability of that, unfortunately. I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that every champion out there is saying the same thing. They're going, I'm working on it.
Right. Yeah, it's all about improving every day. And that's what I really love about racing, is learning every different car, every different track, and adapting, because you constantly have to adapt to different transmissions, whether it's front wheel, rear wheel. So it's really fun to figure out. It's like a puzzle piece almost to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a preference between sprint racing and endurance racing?
I like different aspects of both. I really, really like the intensity of sprint racing and just being in a really tight group of cars, and just the adrenaline in sprint racing is insane to me. And it just makes you want to keep coming back for more. But then in endurance racing, I really love that it's more of a team aspect, and you have to think a lot about strategy over that time and how to preserve your car. And I love working with the team kind of more in terms of pit stops and all of that. So, any form of racing, I'm just super excited about,
Oh,
like,
gee, I couldn't tell.
yeah, I know.
uh, so I don't know if I'm digging too much here, but some drivers are really, really aggressive to the point of being too aggressive. Some drivers are, and then there are some drivers who are just a little bit too nice out on the track. And to win, you've got to be somewhere in the middle of that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
find yourself playing with that, meaning kind of figuring out, okay, I need to be a little more aggressive now, or I got to dial it back here a little bit, or because there's, one of the things about endurance racing is your teammates can become friends in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
or very close friends. And there does come a point where it's like, yeah, but I got to destroy that teammate because I'm here to look after my own career. So I'm just kind of curious where you're at with that balancing act with all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's such a fine line. If you're too aggressive, you're wrecking the car, but if you're too nice, you're last. So
Yeah.
you don't want either of those. And I think that kind of speaks to driving as well. It's all about, in terms of specific driving ability, it's all about staying on that fine line of being too loose or, I guess not enough. And in terms of when I'm racing, I think I found a pretty good balance between aggressive and not aggressive enough. Uh, like I said, I've practiced that patience a lot, and I think that's helped me kind of dial back the aggression.
So would you say that there have been times when you've been not patient enough?
Yeah, I mean, Spec Miata is is a great teacher of patience, like we were saying, just because, if you force it and like, I've tried to force passes before and you end up off in the grass or worse in the wall, and um you get a talking to at the end of the day by your person that you tried to force a pass on. So it's I've definitely experienced that, but it's taught me, and always trying to improve as well. Always trying to dial in the aggression levels.
Yeah. I would say that a lot of the young drivers that I've worked with through the years, that's a challenging one because it's kind of, you're at an age where you're still kind of forming your behavioral traits, your personality, and everything. And there comes a time where you got to crank it up and you got to be super dominant and you got to be super aggressive. And then other times where you've got to dial that back. And then,
Mm-hmm.
then you got to be outgoing and going meet with teams and teammates and sponsors and everything else. And it's a tough thing, but I find that the best drivers have that ability to kind of adapt to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually an area that I think the visualization is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah. Anyways, I could go off on on that whole bit about the career of young drivers in that way, and
Oh,
it's so much more than just driving a car, right?
oh, it's incredible how much it takes. I mean, like you said, it's every end of the spectrum. I mean, to really make it in racing, you have to spend hours and hours a day on it. And you have to be appealing to sponsors, which is difficult because you have to take a different persona to that as you would dealing with a competitor who, you may have had some sort of altercation on track. And, also being a girl, I have to be confident as well, which is important because I can't allow for people to push me around. So I can't always just be this, happy, cheery, nice girl. I also have to kind of stand my ground and let people know I'm not to be messed with. Just like another guy would approach another guy, they kind of have a different dynamic. And as much of a bummer as that is right now, it's kind of still something to deal with.
So have you had that experience where they were just going to push you around to prove a point that you're a girl, I'm a guy, I'm going to push you around?
Not outrightly, which is great.
That's good.
Yeah, which is really good. But, I've had different things where I think my gender does play a role. But at the end of the day, I think most people in racing are really good people and just do it because they love it, which is great to see. But, there's always that oddball in wherever you are. It's always going to happen. It happens anywhere. So, I think just going back to the confidence thing, it's important, I think, for a younger girl in this sport.
Well, you said oddball. That's a polite way of putting it. Well, it makes me think of, I know road racers who have gone into NASCAR, and there are some of the old timer NASCAR drivers that are going, road racer, let's go push them around.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
You're not from around here, so let's push you around. And you kind of got to push back to gain their respect, right?
Right. It kind of goes back to the aggression thing too, is like sometimes you have to be a little bit more aggressive and you have to realize when that's happening. Like you were saying, if a road racer goes to a NASCAR race, you got to show what you're made of.
Mm-hmm. You don't have any problem doing that, do you?
I don't think I do. I don't like to think I do.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, you touched on earlier that you and your dad spend some time on the simulator. How much time do you spend on a sim training?
So I just graduated college in July. And before that, I'd try to get in a couple hours a week, 3 to 5 hours a week. Now I'm trying to step that up more because I think it's a really valuable tool, not only in terms of learning tracks, but I also think it really helps you stay in that racing mentality. So, going and racing a 30-minute race on iRacing every couple of nights, I think helps you kind of focus in your mindset. And then also kind of help, for me, it helps calm my nerves in terms of like knowing what to do and dealing with that high stress situation. Because honestly, sim racing is when you get in any sort of race car, it feels stressful no matter what, in the best way possible, of course. But for me, it's such a great tool. And so like I said, I've been stepping it up a little bit more. And my WRL teammates always want to get on the simulator with me, which is awesome. And it's really fun. And every time, we're just messing around with each other, making crazy passes, seeing what's possible, what's not possible. And we just have a really good time with it. It's all about being in the car. And while the simulator doesn't, show exact things of what it's like to be in the car, I think it gives a pretty close idea.
Yeah. This my experience has been there's a lot of drivers that don't take advantage of a simulator enough, and not just I don't use it enough, but they just get on and they do a race, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun and everything, but there's so much you can practice on a simulator, and like you said, trying different passes, seeing what works, what doesn't work, but even hop on the sim, do 5 laps, get off and kind of go, okay, how quick did I get up to speed? And I don't know, it seems like 30 minutes on a simulator is harder to focus than 30 minutes in a real car. So if you can do it an hour in the simulator, wow, it just makes you feel so much better prepared.
I absolutely agree. It's like you said, it's sometimes harder to focus. I don't know why. Maybe it's because nothing's really at stake in the simulator. And because sometimes I find myself on outlaps just crashing randomly. I'm like, I would never do that in real life. But so like you said, it just helps with the focus so much. And then I also really like to practice looking ahead in the simulator and my visual techniques, and, work on, not that they'll translate perfectly, but work on really being precise about break points, about turn-in points, all of that. Honestly, just every aspect of it, practicing, I think, helps a ton.
So do you think there's any, and this is, I'm curious because I'm spend a lot of time coaching on simulators and using the sim to help drivers and thinking about how I can use simulators better. But what experience have you had in terms of it building the wrong habits?
I think something that you can run into is maybe practicing on the simulator and then going to the track and doing everything based off of your simulator work. So, for example, breakpoints or even gears. You don't want to go off of exactly what you learned in the simulator because there's a lot of discrepancies between the simulator and real life. A breakpoint may be a little bit further up or whatever. There's always nuances, and I have run into, oh, well, I did that on the simulator, which I don't do anymore. I make sure I look at video and do things like that as well to really kind of take the two and mold them together to what I'm going to do on the track.
That's actually really, yeah, really smart because, yeah, I've seen too many drivers show up at a track and try something and go, well, it worked in a simulator.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I've done
well,
that too. I learned from experience. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
While we're loading your car on the tow truck,
right.
we'll talk about how it worked in the sim. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they're an amazing tool. Actually, I'm curious. Did you drive on simulator before you started racing, or was it something you started afterwards?
It was something I started afterwards. My dad works in the industry. He works a lot with Road to Indy, and he's seen some drivers who have gone just from simulator to a real track in a real car for the first time and do incredibly well. And I've seen some of my friends do that as well. And so my dad and I got talking and decided it was probably a pretty important tool to have
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, because nowadays most drivers have them, and it saves a lot of time and a lot of money because when you get to the track, you're not just kind of driving around trying to remember your rights and lefts and all of that stuff. So it saves money, honestly, at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how good is your dad on the sim?
Oh, I beat him. um, it's such a blast. We always just one of us gets on, does 5 laps, and then the other one gets on and does 5 laps, and we're all constantly heckling each other, like, you didn't hit your apex well enough, or just things like that. And it's really fun because I think it elevates both of us, and I think my dad enjoys getting back behind the wheel in a sense. In another way, it kind of brings him back to his old racing days, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting how older people, uh, myself very much included in that, if you didn't start with video games and gaming and stuff like that, and then you get on a sim, for the first little while, it can be awkward. It can seem just so foreign. And yet some people just adapt to it better than others. And I know some people who have tried it and they try it and they try it and they try it and try it and go, I just not getting it, and they don't continue with it. And others try it and pick it up pretty quickly. And then it becomes this hugely valuable tool. And I also know some people who, they're in their early 20s. They've been playing simulator and gaming and things for years, but they're not very good on a simulator. So there isn't some perfect correlation between age and ability in a simulator. So I don't know. Find it interesting.
No, that's absolutely true. And, it's because some people well, I think it's necessary for all drivers to drive based off of the seat and the seat of their pants, and really feeling the car rotate. And that's something you don't have in the simulator. But that being said, I think the simulator is helpful in the fact that you can start to pick up those cues in your steering wheel. But it's funny because I was never much of a gamer before, and I feel like I'm always troubleshooting different issues in the simulator because it's so complex, and I'm deep into the YouTube interwebs trying to in the gaming interwebs, and I was like, I never thought I would be here. But it's awesome. It's cool that it's available, and I'm learning more about computers and things like that as I go.
Well, it's interesting you say about feeling it through the steering wheel. I have a theory that drivers who started on simulators, they tend to sense the limits of the car more through the steering wheel, and it's almost they intentionally induce some amount of understeer early in the corner, because then they can feel it. They're going, yeah, I've got this. I can feel the steering movement. I can feel how much understeer I've got. Other drivers who didn't start in simulators, but maybe starting, your dad, maybe one of them, who drives the car more off the rear of the car, and you rely more on that yaw, that rotation of the car, and I think that those drivers have more difficulty in a simulator because they're trying to sense the limits off the rear tires, and it's harder to feel that in a sim.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it's also hard, I think, for certain drivers to have just picked up this tool later in their career to get those feelings, because there's certain nuances in the simulator, like we kept saying, that are different. And then I'm not to this level yet because I'm not an extremely good sim racer. Like, some of them are just mind-blowingly good.
Yeah.
But I think there's certain tricks in the simulator, from what I've heard, that you use in the simulator that you wouldn't necessarily use in real life.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just kind of have to be aware, I think, of all of those things, and aware that that's something that happens in the simulator. So, okay, I probably shouldn't do this in real life.
Yeah. Like launching the car over the curb, that if you did it in real life, the car would break after 3 laps.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting last year during the major part of the lockdown, when all the IndyCar drivers were on the simulator, and there were certain drivers who picked it up, or they were already great sim racers, and some that picked it up and became excellent sim racers, and then some struggled more. And I believe it's that some drivers drive the car more off the front end of the car, and some drive it more off the rear end of the car. And I think that's a big difference when you're in the sim, because you just don't get that feel from the rear tires.
Right. And that was really interesting to watch. And it was kind of cool to see everyone gathering around sim racing and taking it and using that as the off season, which was really cool to me.
So what do you think? If you could never get in another car again, real car at the track, could you become one of these esports sim racers full time? Like, really make it
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it all comes down to dedication, and the more time you're willing to spend on it, the better you can be. And it's something I really enjoy doing in my free time. Like, I get kind of, like I said, the same adrenaline rush off of it. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I think if I could never get in a real car, I think it would be really cool. And it's a way, I think, sometimes I've seen it happen where it opens doors for sim racers to get in real cars. If they've showed enough speed and racecraft, they may get the opportunity, which is really cool to me, because, racing is not easy for people to just pick up, especially young people. And so it's cool that it's a different entry point.
Well, I wonder
if way less expensive.
Yeah, that is true. I wonder if that shows a little bit about why you race, because I for me personally, I race to compete. That's what that's, we could be we can go to the indoor karting place. We could be in a sim rig. We can be, two bicycles are there. I'm going to try to beat you to wherever we're going on the bicycles, right? Like that's why I do what I do. So if I could never ever get in another car again, I think I could be totally absorbed in sim racing because I can still compete. Other drivers, they race for different reasons. And that competition thing is, I mean, I'm not saying it's not there. Obviously, it's got to be there to some level. But I wonder if that says something about your competitiveness, your drive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way as you. When we go to indoor go-karting tracks, it's almost a disaster because it's like you're doing everything you can to beat the next guy. And it's always hilarious when you bring race car drivers to an indoor go-kart track because one time, yes, it's war. I was go-karting with my uncle Robbie, and I remember being up on two wheels, gliding along the side of the barrier, just like and he would not give me any room to, drop back down onto all fours. So it's hilarious. And, you come away bruised and your hands are all blistered, but
you're laughing.
But it's so much fun and you cannot stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it just goes to show a lot of us are just so competitive.
Yeah. Hey, let's getting back into the car and let's talk about your Global MX-5 Cup season this year. Like you said, I mean, and I've seen it's just super, super, super competitive. And is there anything that you can kind of go, that's what I really got to work on with my driving this year? There's, I got to work on my racecraft, or I got to work on my corner entry speed, or I got to work on, being more calm in the car. Is there anything that you want to share with all the 4 people that listen to this podcast?
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
There's 2 things. So this year I'm really working on patience. And early in my racing career, somebody told me that you want to either be on the gas or on the brake. And it's kind of a bummer because that developed into a bad habit in that as soon as I got off the brake, I was on the gas trying to get to full throttle. And I'm starting to realize that having a moment of letting the car just coast and roll and carry that speed is really important because if you get on the throttle too soon, you have to get off, of course, otherwise you won't make the exit. And so that means your time to full throttle is delayed that much further. And of course, down the straightaway, then your top speed is going to be slower. And so that's something I'm really working on. Another thing is always braking late, I think is important. I think it's a good skill to have and develop, is the ability to take the car as far as you can into the brake zone. Because again, it's all just about carrying mid-corner speed, and the later you can get on the brakes, the more speed you're going to be carrying through the corner. And of course, always working on racecraft. It's something I think we can always develop more. And it's always great, I think, to watch your race video back and see, oh, I could have gone on the right side as opposed to the left of this guy, or done these different things. And so I think those 3 things are the biggest things I'm working on this year.
So I will apologize because I've said on one pedal the other, but here's the thing. I think that I was misquoted because, everything in racing, there are no rules.
Right.
So when somebody says you should always be on the brake pedal or the gas pedal, that's a good guideline. Like it's a good goal to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there, especially, I think absolutely, I agree 1,000% with you that there are times where you kind of got to just hesitate in between, let the car finish rotating or transitioning. And then when you go to power, it's one whoop to the throttle to full throttle. And I think that's a big, big mistake that a lot of drivers make, is they're just so off the brake onto the throttle and then On the throttle, off the throttle, on the throttle, off the throttle. Oh,
Right.
now I'm finally on full throttle.
Right. I think there's a difference between, getting on the throttle super gradually and consistently, as opposed to full throttle, full off throttle, full throttle, full off throttle, because that's what you don't want, I believe. But if you do a more gradual step to throttle and kind of feel the car and see what it does as you give it a little bit more and a little bit more throttle.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, so I'm going to go back to the obvious stuff of your family and things like this. And, there's always been talk about, sons of, fathers that raced and all that kind of stuff. And so little Al is your...
He's my dad's cousin.
Your dad's cousin. That's it.
Yes.
Right. So, I can remember when I raced against him, sort of. He was a little better. But people would go, is that just in the DNA, in the genes, And, the same with Michael Andretti. And I wonder, I always said that, imagine sitting, you're Michael Andretti, imagine sitting at a dinner table with Mario Andretti talking about racing, or Al Jr. with Al Sr. at dinner table, you with your dad. Like, I just got to think the conversations over dinner, you learn so much about racecraft and what should be done and what shouldn't be done, kind of through osmosis.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah, I do believe that happened because I've been at the racetrack since I was born. I mean, I was going to the Indy 500 with my dad when I was 1 and 2 years old, and of course you don't know really what's going on, but over time it's something you hear about. And then also too, osmosis in terms of the business aspect of it as well, because I'd be around my dad and he'd be dealing with his race career, and it's something I'm really lucky to have, and I'm lucky to have that family expertise, because I think a lot of young drivers get into racing and don't realize all of these little things about racing that are different from many other sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a crazy sport.
Yeah, it really is. But, getting in the race car and feeling those feelings that we all feel, it's what makes us keep coming back time and time again. It's what makes all of the business and the work behind it really worth it.
Well, I can see just in your face how much, unfortunately on the podcast, your face doesn't come through very well, but I can just see your face lighting up as you talk about it. So this is not something that you're doing because you've been told you should do this, right? It's just you.
Absolutely not. I mean, it just makes me smile every time. And of course the lows are low and it's difficult, but it's the highs, and then also the people I've met through racing.
Yeah.
I've met some incredible people, and it's just that environment, and it's almost like, it's hard once you start racing. It's a little bit harder almost to relate to other people who don't race, because they don't understand as much how much it means to us and how much we're like on the edge, and just it feels like a drug, which, I mean, I don't know what drugs feel like, but that's what I assume.
Yeah.
Of course, what a drug feels like is just this crazy feeling you get. And it just makes you love it. But then, you can't necessarily relate, like the Monday blues, for example, after a race weekend for me are always so real, because like you come off of this incredible weekend, or maybe not, maybe it was a hard weekend, but either way you feel like you miss it so much, and I don't know, it's obviously, you can tell I'm having a hard time describing it, but I just love it so much.
We can hear it and I can see it. So yeah, I mean, it's. I think everybody listening to this can relate, because it's that passion. It's you're right. It is like an addiction.
Yeah,
but it's a good one.
I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
But you're always trying to find that extra tenth, that extra thousandth.
Yeah.
And once you do, there's no, it's just so exciting.
Yeah.
And that improvement and, figuring little things out for me is one thing I really love about the sport.
So can I ask you, what is your one piece of advice? So if I said, Loni, can you share your speed secret with people listening to this? One piece of advice that you would give drivers to help them be better drivers. Put you on the spot here.
Yeah, for sure. I think with anything, hard work is always just really important. People can say it's in my DNA or whatever, but I think at the end of the day, it still takes a tremendous amount of hard work and dedication, and it takes looking at video, looking at old races, and always learning and improving. So I think that's my speed secret, is just dedication and hard work.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with that too. So, and I actually think it's maybe perhaps harder for somebody like yourself who's got a family history, or somebody that comes into the sport and just immediately has big success. Because, I'm sure there are people that look at you and go, oh, well, with your name, you're just going to get all the sponsors and you're going to get all the best rides and everything. And you just don't even, and it would be easy for you to kind of buy into that and go, wow, I got her made and I'm not going to work that hard. And I've seen people in that situation that they didn't go anywhere without the hard work. And the only reason that you're doing what you're doing, and what I love about what you're doing, is, you're working your way up from the bottom. You're not like trying to, well, let me skip a few steps because, my dad can help me do that or whatever. You're paying your dues. That's super important.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me because I think talent is a word that gets thrown around too much in racing. I think because someone can say, oh, that person's really talented, but they may not be talented. They may just have put in a tremendous amount of hard work. And, of course I have a natural ability, but that will only take me so far. And I need to recognize that that's not going to take me to the top. I also need to put in all of the hours to find sponsorship and to do everything because,
It's the classic thing. And I know drivers, I've coached drivers who are, people say, oh, naturally talented. Oh, just so much natural talent. Well, you know what? They work a lot harder than anybody else I know. It's funny how, it's the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right.
The harder I work, the more talented I get.
Right.
It's that same thing. So, Loni, keep at it. How do people follow you? Social media, websites, that kind of stuff. What's the best way for people to follow you this season?
I'm Loni Unser everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok now, if you're interested. And I am at LoniUnser.com.
Okay, I will put those in the show notes as well, so people can follow you, because I think they really should follow you, because you're going to have an awesome season. And this episode is going to go live when you and I are both at Daytona. You'll be racing your first Global MX5 Cup race of the year, and I'll be watching.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to talk to you, and always enjoy talking about racing with another fellow race car driver.
With another fellow goofball. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a better way to put it. Goofball, honestly.
Yeah. Hey, Loni, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for sharing with our listeners, and good luck this season. Keep having fun.
All right. Thanks, Ross.
Does your organization need a guest speaker for an event? Does your driving group need a seminar leader or an instructor? Ross will come to you in person, or he will join you online for a webinar with you and your associates. He's happy to talk about driving, mental imagery, learning, or just telling stories about the racing life. Go to speedsecrets.com/presentations for more information and to contact Ross for a conversation about your event.